This is the new Peugeot 2008, and to start this review, let's talk about the styling of Peugeot's new small SUV. So it's based very closely on the small car 208, but you can see the dimensions are different and some of the styling's different too. So first thing to point out is the grille. On the 208, it has this kind of smaller horizontal design to it, but now on the 2008, it's stretched out more and you have a vertical design. So trying to give it a bigger, bolder, more kind of SUV focused look to it. You may recognize these headlights here and the three claws as well as this fang at the bottom. Now they are exactly the same units that you find on the 208, but crucially, the difference is on the 208, they're right next to each other. On the 2008, you can see there's a bit of bodywork separating them. Again, stretching out the car, trying to give it a bigger, bolder, more robust off-road look. Around the side here, you can see this kind of interesting design element of a crease in the side of the car. And if you're interested in that kind of thing, the designer was explaining that they wanted to give it a kind of rock-like texture. Again, trying to give it an off-road look. However, I will just point out, this is another SUV that is only available in two-wheel drive. So you can't get an all-wheel drive version of the 2008. So it's very much on-road focused. But you can see at the back, again, the same crease, and you have it on both sides, of course. And it leads to a nice design of the taillights. And again, you will recognise these from the 208. They're exactly the same units used in that car. Now, while we're at the back of the car, let's talk a bit more about the dimensions, because obviously this car is significantly bigger than the 208, and it's also significantly bigger than the previous generation 2008. The biggest change is the length, and it's also lower. With the added length, they have put a bit more boot space in, but the main focus really was for rear seat passenger space, which we'll look at in a minute. But for now, let's check out the boot. You can see a reasonable size. You can fit some family's luggage in the back there, hopefully your family's rather than another random family's luggage. And it's not a class leader by any stretch of the imagination, but still fairly good and impressive that you have the ability to prop up the boot floor on these kind of pop-outable hinge things. I don't really know what to call them. Maybe you could suggest what we call them. And it just means it gives you both hands free to load in luggage and also opens up this underfloor boot space as well. So, useful addition and standard on every 2008. But now let's have a look inside the car. Now, this is certainly one of the most impressive interiors in the class. And if you recognise it, again, it is exactly the same as the Peugeot 208. But that's no problem because that is a very impressive interior. And so it is here in this class. The only difference is this is slightly wider. So Peugeot, we were explaining that these door cards are different to try and cope with the extra width of the cabin, but otherwise it's what we've seen before. Brilliant materials throughout, a really nice finish to everything. All these gloss black plastics feel really good quality, and an infotainment system that is not one of the best, but you do at least get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. And another annoying thing is that if you go for the bigger infotainment screen, then you lose some shortcut buttons around the screen itself, and instead they go down onto this sort of piano key styled sticky outy bit down here. But the annoying thing is when you press these shortcut buttons, you can't actually feel whether you've pressed them or not. So on the move, it just means it's slightly annoying. I'd rather have a kind of physical movement that goes with it, like you get on the actual piano key shortcut buttons down there. But small point, it's still a pretty okay system by the class standards. And you have this small Peugeot steering wheel, which won't be a problem for some drivers, but for others, you'll find if you're moving it, then it does block the driver display a little bit. But another point to mention here is that just like in the 208, you have the option of going for the 3D iCockpit, which essentially takes the driver display and gives a kind of 3D effect to it. Now, it's very hard to show and also quite difficult to explain, but it is really cool. There's no real practical use to it. I mean, Peugeot will tell you, oh, but it puts more important numbers closer to the driver's face, but really, that's not the point of it. It's that it looks really cool and you'll find nothing else in the class that will do the same thing. Space-wise, no problem at all up front, and the storage options are really good. Nice deep cubby hole there, a couple of cup holders, a tray for a phone there, and this really pretty impressive quality hidden cabin here, which lets you prop your phone up in the middle and also offers a wireless phone charging space as well. But what's the space like in the back? It is very impressive again back here. From a practicality point of view, this is certainly one of the roomier rear seat spaces in the small SUV class. So you can see loads of legroom, loads of knee room, and a good amount of space to put your feet under the front seat as well. Headroom is slightly worse. You have got a sunroof which finishes before the rear seats, but it does leave a bit of a bulge in the ceiling there. But it's only really if you're especially tall that you'll be uncomfortable back here for long journeys. So generally very impressive, and it feels wide as well, so you won't be cramped. Although saying that, 3 adults side by side won't necessarily be the most comfortable place in the world back here. You also get 2 USB ports, and generally it is very impressive back here. But now let's actually see what it's like on the road. Now, Peugeot has set the bar very high with its SUVs. The 5008 and the 3008 are really, really impressive cars. But there's no guarantee of success for the 2008 because it's built on a different platform. It uses different underpinnings to those cars. And in all honesty, it doesn't quite reach the same heights as those cars. So the problem with this platform, and we've driven lots of other cars like the DS3 Crossback, the Peugeot 208, the Corsa, they're all built on the same underpinnings as this 2008. And the problem with all of them seems to be the low speed ride, which just feels a bit unsettled and has a slightly firm edge to it as well. So around town, it's certainly not the most comfortable car in the class. However, when you go a bit faster, or if you find a flat bit of motorway, then it's certainly comfortable enough there. To drive, this is one of the bigger small SUVs out there, and you do feel it compared to something like a Seat Arona. That car is just more agile, more compact, slightly more fun to just drive through some backcountry roads. The 2008 does feel a lot bigger than all of those, and you do get a bit more body roll with it through corners as well, but it's still predictable enough. There's nothing hugely wrong with the steering. It's not full of feel, but then obviously nothing in this class really is. So it's not something that's hugely exciting, but it's sure-footed, there's plenty of grip, and it's predictable and stable, which I guess in a small SUV, that's all you're really gonna need, isn't it? As for the engines, you have a few different petrols to choose, 1 diesel and a fully electric version, which we're gonna drive in a minute. So with the petrols, we would say that the choice really would be between the PureTech 130, which is the car that we're driving now, and it's really strong, very impressive, nice and peppy around town, but really good on the motorway as well. You get a 6-speed manual gearbox as standard, and it's got quite a chunky, big gear lever, but the action itself is okay. It's quite a long throw. It's not as slick and as pleasant as Seat Arona, but it's still fine. And this engine is really impressive. But you could also be tempted with the PureTech 100, which is less powerful, but it's the cheapest way into a Peugeot 2008. And that brings me on to the next point, which is that this is an expensive car compared to all of its rivals. So really, it would probably make sense to keep the price down as much as you can. And that PureTech 100 engine is still fine. We tried it in other products and we'd expect it in a 2008. It won't feel massively underpowered, and it could serve the purpose for many potential buyers. But it is an expensive car, so what you're getting for your money is one of the biggest small SUVs, but obviously it's still a small SUV even though it's one of the biggest. It's clear that the main draw of this car, like the 208, is the styling inside and out. So that was the petrol and diesel 2008. This is the fully electric e-2008, and we'll point out the styling differences first, but it's not going to take very long because the grille, slightly different. It's horizontal rather than vertical. Moving around to the side, there's an E-badge, and at the back of the car, instead of somewhere to put your fuel, you've got a charging port. But that's it. So in the E2008, you get all the typical electric car traits. So you can hear it's very quiet. There's no engine noise whatsoever. You also have the big acceleration on offer as well, straight away when you put your foot down, and it's generally quite relaxing, although it does have quite a firm low-speed ride. Now, it was more noticeable in the Peugeot e-208, but you still have in the e-2008, at low speeds, when it's going over big bumps, it does feel quite firm, and you get quite a lot of suspension noise that goes with it as well. So that's the only kind of thing that taints the relaxing low-speed element to this car. But when you do get some speed into it, it feels pretty stable. It's quiet, it's smooth, and also the brake pedal is quite good for an electric car. There's still a bit of dead travel right at the top of the pedal, but then once you get into the meat of it, it makes it quite easy to judge stopping distances and use it smoothly as well. And can't necessarily notice a huge difference in handling between this car and the previous 2008 that we were driving. So the extra weight doesn't necessarily mean that this is now awful to drive around a corner. But of course, with electric cars, the really, really crucial thing is how far is it going to go on a full charge? Well, the e2008 will, from a full charge, be able to cover around 200 miles, which is a respectable number. It's certainly not one of the longest ranges of electric cars that are around, but it's still pretty good. And really, if you think about it, 200 miles should be enough for lots and lots of people. But again, just like the 2008, this is a very expensive car. And when you consider you've got options like the Renault Zoe and even something like a Seat Mii electric, which doesn't go as far, isn't as big, but it is much cheaper, then it's a bit more of a tough sell for the e-2008. But the 2008 and e-2008 are still impressive cars with lots going for them. And if you want to read more about those cars, you can go on our website and see our extended written review of both those cars and in fact every other new car on sale. And if you have enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you gave it a like. And also, if you like electric cars or if you just like new cars and reviews, then it'd be great if you subscribe to our channel, because we have loads of videos that come out every week. And of course, if you're in the market for a new car, then to get the best deal, go to whatcar.com. And really, in less than 60 seconds, you can find out exactly how much money we can save you.